Flicking through a little book of sex tips. Remember when the bars were all electric? And now when she told she's gonna get it, I'm guessing that she'd rather just forget it. Clinging to not getting sentimental. Said she wasn't going but she went still. Like a gentleman had to be gentle. Was it a mechadabra or a betting pencil? Oh, the boys are slag. The best you ever had. The best you ever had is just a memory. And those dreams weren't as daft as they seem. As daft as they seem, my love, when you dream them overflow. Where did you go? Where did you go? Where did you go? Falling about, you took a left off last life lane, just sounding it out, but you're not coming back again. You're falling about, you took a left off last life lane, you were just sounding it out, but you're not coming back again. You used to get it in your fishnets, now you only get it in your nightdress. You started off the annoying acts of niceness, living in a very common crisis. Everything's in order in a black hole. Is everything as pretty as the past though? That bloody man is like an Tabasco. Remember when you used to be a rascal?
She's got a Chevy, double parked with the doors swung. What FM preacher, the radio's high. Hair in a tantrum, eyes like two shrieks of fire. To her boyfriend on the way.
Hello, everyone. All right, let me just get things set up so I'm not hearing myself again. Is that better? No. Maybe no. Okay, I give up on trying to do this like a pro. I'm just taking the headphones off. It doesn't matter anymore. All right. As long as it's better. There we go. All right, folks. So looks like we're on chapter 11 from last week. So hopefully anybody who was behind has had time to catch up now. We were left on a cliffhanger. I would give you more of a reminder of what happened, but honestly, I don't remember, and I didn't have time to read the chapter summaries that I pulled up. So there's that. But let's update our doodad here. So this is at least right. Yes, Bad Business Daddy is back. That I definitely remember. But everything else, just my brain broke. I got broke brain. And honestly, right before this, I was catching up on last night's Talkin' Sex stream. So my brain is still all in that. Oh, and I see I don't really play video games is hanging in the Discord chat. Show date's cool. Oh, no, back in the Twitch chat now. Okay, all right. Yay! Thank you for the follow. Oh, okay, and the bog is pronounced bog, rhymes with frog. Okay, let's go with bog. I like it better. I don't know. I was just going with like... Yes, and it was so fun last night. Last night was so fun. I wasn't able to be in the chat last night for honestly just as embarrassing reasons. My boyfriend wanted to watch Star Trek. So we did that instead. Which, like, fair. He's like, I don't want to listen to smut tonight. Can we just watch Star Trek? I was like, okay. Watched a weird episode of Voyager. I guess it's like one of the worst ones where two of the characters, the captain and the pilot, turn into lizard people and have babies together. It's very weird. I hope that doesn't spoil like a 30-year-old show for anybody, but very weird. Okay, cool. I think we're all set. So I am going to get right into reading for this week. So yeah, Bad Business Daddy is dat. Bad Business Daddy. We'll find out what's going on with that. How he got here, why he's here. Fair warning, I'm home alone tonight. So it's a girls' night. It's just me and the dog. So hopefully there won't be any loud noises of her eating her dinner or anything like that, because this is her dinner time and she's just gonna have to wait. But usually my partner feeds her while I'm reading, and it is so annoying. Oh. Yes, yeah, we are on chapter 11 currently, just about to start it. And as we go, as I remember things, I will try and remind people of stuff as I remember it. So we'll see what we remember. Sometimes I get a little lost and I just sort of start to say stuff, and I should be better about that. So anyway, chapter 11. I didn't give myself a chance to panic, to doubt, to do anything but wish I had stolen some food from my breakfast table as I layered on tunic after tunic and bundled myself in a cloak, stuffing the knife I'd stolen into my boot. The extra clothes and the satchel would just be a burden to carry. My father had come to take me, to save me. Whatever benefits Tamlin had given him upon my departure couldn't be too tempting then. Maybe he had a ship prepared to take us far, far away. Maybe he had somehow sold the cottage and gotten enough money to set us up in a new place, a new continent. My father, my crippled, broken father, had come. A quick survey of the ground beneath my window revealed no one outside, and the silent house told me no one had spotted my father yet. He was still waiting by the hedge, now beckoning to me. At least Tamlin had not returned. With a final glance at my room, listening for anyone approaching from the hall, I grasped the nearby trellis of wisteria and eased down the building. I winced at the crunch of gravel beneath my boots, but my father was already moving toward the outer gates, limping along with his cane. How had he even gotten here? There had to be horses nearby then. He was hardly wearing enough clothing for the winter that would await us, but once we crossed the wall... he was hardly wearing enough clothing for the winter that awaited us once we crossed the wall. But I'd layered on so much that I could spare him some items if need be. Keeping my movements light and silent, carefully avoiding the light of the moon, I hurried after my father. He moved with surprising swiftness toward the darkened hedges and the gate beyond. Only a few hall candles were burning inside the house. I didn't dare breathe too loudly, didn't dare call for my father as he limped toward the gate. If we left now, if he indeed had horses, we could be halfway home by the time they realized I was gone. Then we'd flee. Flee Tamlin, flee the blight that could soon invade our lands. My father reached the gates. They were already open, the dark forest beyond beckoning. He must have hidden the horses deeper in. He turned toward me, that familiar face drawn and tight, those brown eyes clear for once, and beckoned. Hurry, hurry, every movement of his hand seemed to shout. My heart was a raging beat in my chest, in my throat. Only a few feet now, to him, to freedom, to a new life. A massive hand wrapped around my arm. Going somewhere? Shit, shit, shit! Tamlin's claws poked through my layers of clothing as I looked up at him in unabashed terror. I didn't dare move, not as his lips thinned and the muscles in his jaw quivered. Not as he opened his mouth and I glimpsed fangs. Long, throat-tearing fangs shining in the moonlight. He was going to kill me right there, and then kill my father. No more loopholes, no more flattery, no more mercy. He didn't care anymore. I was as good as dead. Please, I breathed. My father. Your father? He lifted his stare to the gates beyond me, and his growl rumbled through me as he bared his teeth. Why don't you look again? He released me. I staggered back a step, whirling, sucking in a breath to tell my father to run, but he wasn't there. Only a pale bow and a quiver of pale arrows remained, propped up against the gates. Mountain ash. They hadn't been there moments before, hadn't. They rippled as if they were nothing but water. And then the bow and quiver became a large pack, laden with supplies. Another ripple, and there were my sisters, huddled together, weeping. My knees buckled. What is... I didn't finish the question. My father now stood there, still hunched and beckoning. A flawless rendering. Weren't you warned to keep your wits about you? Tamlin snapped. That your human senses would betray you. He stepped beyond me, let out a snarl so vicious that whatever the thing was by the gates shimmered with light and darted out as fast as lightning streaking through the dark. Fool, he said to me, turning. If you're ever going to run away, at least do it in the daytime. He stared me down, and the fangs slowly retracted. The claws remained. There are worse things than the bog prowling these woods at night. That thing at the gates isn't one of them. And it still would have taken a good long while devouring you. Somehow, my mouth began working again, and all of the things to say, I blurted, Can you blame me? My crippled father appears beneath my window, and you think I'm not going to run for him? Do you actually think I'd gladly stay here forever? Even if you'd taken care of my family, all for some treaty that had nothing to do with me, and allows your kind to slaughter humans as you see fit? He flexed his fingers, as if trying to get the claws back in, but they remained out, ready to slice through flesh and bone. What do you want, Feyre? I want to go home. Home to what, exactly? You prefer that miserable human existence to this? I made a promise, I said, my breathing ragged, to my mother when she died, that I'd look after my family, that I'd take care of them. All I have done, every single day, every hour, has been for that vow. And just because I was hunting to save my family, to put food in their bellies, I'm now forced to break it. He stalked toward the house, and I gave him a wide berth before failing. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, guys. Dog. Ugh. Shame her. Shame her for bumping the microphone. Yes. As we've paused here for a moment, due to dog, I do want to say Jackie discovering the last podcast fanfic was just, it was chef's kiss. It was perfect. Because I remember that from like forever ago. I'd completely forgotten that existed. And as far as I know, there's like tons of it, right? So, I don't know. I'm sure that's horrifying for her. Just as horrifying as if Henry found fanfic of Jackie. I'm sure there's equal levels there. I certainly wouldn't want to read fanfic about my brother and his friends. Ugh. Okay, where was I here? He stalked toward the house, and I gave him a wide berth before falling into step behind him. His claws slowly retracted. He didn't look at me as he said, "You are not breaking your vow. You're fulfilling it. And then some. You're fulfilling it and then some by staying here. Your family is better cared for now than they were when you were there." Those chipped, miscolored paintings inside the cottage flashed in my vision. Perhaps they would forget who had even painted them in the first place. Insignificant. Excuse you. Yes. Insignificant. That's what all those years I'd given them would be. As insignificant as I was to these high fae. And that dream I'd had of one day living with my father, with enough food and money and paint, it had been my dream, no one else's. I rubbed at my chest. I can't just give up on it, on them, no matter what you say. Even if I had been a fool, a stupid human fool, to believe my father would ever actually come for me. Tamlin eyed me sidelong. You're not giving up on them. Living in luxury, stuffing myself with food? How is that not? They're cared for. They are fed and comfortable. Fed and comfortable? If he couldn't lie, if it was true, then it was beyond anything I'd ever dared hope for. Then my vow to my mother was fulfilled. It stunned me enough that I didn't say anything for a moment as we walked. My life was now owned by the treaty, but perhaps I'd been freed in another sort of way. We neared the sweeping stairs that led into the manor, and I finally asked, "Lucian goes on border patrol, and you've mentioned other sentries, yet I've never seen one here. Where are they all?" "At the border," he said, as if that were a suitable answer. Then he added, "We don't need sentries if I'm here." Oh. Maybe she did. Sorry, I'm reading your comments. Yes. No, yeah, I do wonder how she found it. She's tagged in some of them? Ugh, now I have to go look and just figure out what the hell's going on there. Go do some investigating. But basically, yeah, so what's happening in the book right now, I guess she's realizing that, like, she probably shouldn't be so freaking worried because they're taking care of them, and that it's probably, like, good for her to just not. I'm a horribly selfish person, I will say that straight up, and if it were me, and, like, I knew my family was fine, I would just be like, "Okay, stay here." Yeah. I'd be eating all the time. I'd be the most annoying guest though. Like they hate her because Feyre killed one of their family. I'd be at that table just like complaining at them all night. Not about being stuck there, but just like I'd be like, "Oh, do you know what happened to me this one time?" And I just feel the need to like dump all my trauma on them immediately. And they just be like, "Get her out. Get her out. I can't." It just reminds me, like, I was having a whole conversation with some friends the other night. They reminded me about Robert Pattinson's stalker, that stalker that he had back in the Twilight days, that he took to dinner instead of like getting mad at her, and he just whined at her for like 3 hours, and then she didn't follow him anymore. And I immediately went, "Oh no!" Like that would have just made me go deeper. Like for sure, I would have just been like even more of a stalker at that point, and I would have whined back at him for 3 hours, and it probably would have been the worst night of his entire life. So, so lucky him, it wasn't me. Yes, yeah, he like bored her and traumatized her away. Um, you can't do that with me. Please. No, you talk to me about your. I had a whole podcast where I just asked people to talk about their trauma at me. So, yes. Yeah, no, like and like I said, I would just whine back at him. I'd be like, "Oh, you think you have problems, honey? Mine aren't even that bad, relatively." And I would still just be like, "Mine are worse. Listen up." Anyway, okay, back to the book. Because he was deadly enough. I tried not to think about it, but still I asked, "Were you trained as a warrior then?" "Yes." When I didn't reply, he added, "I spent most of my life in my father's war band on the borders, training as a warrior to one day serve him, or others. Running these lands was not supposed to fall to me." The flatness with which he said it told me enough about how he felt about his current title, about why the presence of his silver-tongued friend was necessary. But it was too personal, too demanding, to ask what had occurred to change his circumstances so greatly. So I cleared my throat and said, "What manner of fairies prowl the woods beyond this gate? If the bog isn't the worst of them, what was that thing?" What I meant to ask was, what would have tormented and then eaten me? Who are you to be so powerful that they pose no threat to you? He paused on the bottom step, waiting for me to catch up. "A puka. They use your own desires to lure you to some remote place. Then they eat you, slowly. It probably smelled your human scent in the woods and followed it to the house." I shivered and didn't bother to hide it. Tamlin went on. "These lands used to be well guarded. The deadlier fairies were contained within the borders of their native territories, monitored by the local Fey lords, or driven into hiding. Creatures like the puka never have dared set foot here. But now, the sickness that infected Prithian has weakened the wards that kept them out." A long pause, like the words were choked out of him. "Things are different now. It's not safe to travel alone at night, especially if you're human. Because humans were defenseless as babes compared to natural-born predators. Like Lucian and Tamlin, who didn't need weapons to hunt." I glanced at his hands but found no trace of the claws, only tanned, calloused skin. "What else is different now?" I asked, trailing him up the marble front steps. He didn't stop this time, didn't even look over his shoulder to me, as he said, "Everything." So I truly was to live there forever. As much as I longed to ensure that Tamlin's word about caring for my family was true, as much as his claim that I was taking better care of my family by staying away, even if I was truly fulfilling that vow to my mother by staying in Prithian. Without the weight of that promise, I was left hollow and empty. Over the next 3 days, I found myself joining Lucian on Andrus's old patrol while Tamlin hunted the grounds for the bog, unseen by us. Despite being an occasional bastard, Lucian didn't seem to mind my company, and he did most of the talking, which was fine. It left me to brood over the consequences of firing a single arrow. An arrow. I never fired a single one during those 3 days we rode along the border. That very morning, I'd spied a red doe in a glen and aimed out of instinct. My arrow poised to fly right into her eye as Lucian sneered that she was not a fairy, at least. But I'd stared at her, fat and healthy and content, and then slackened the bow, replaced the arrow in my quiver, and let the doe wander on. I never saw Tamlin around the manor. Off hunting the bog by day and night, Lucian informed me. Off hunting the bog day and night, Lucian informed me. Even at dinner, he spoke little before leaving early, off to continue his hunt, night after night. I didn't mind his absence. It was a relief, if anything. On the third night after my encounter with the puka, I'd scarcely sat down before Tamlin got up, giving an excuse about not wanting to waste hunting time. Lucian and I stared after him for a moment. What I could see of Lucian's face was pale and tight. "You worry about him," I said. Lucian slumped in his seat, wholly undignified for a Fey Lord. "Tamlin gets into moods." "He doesn't want your help hunting the bog?" "He prefers being alone, and having the bog on our lands, I don't suppose you'd understand. The puka are minor enough not to bother him, but even after he's shredded the bog, he'll brood over it." "And there's no one who can help him at all?" "He would probably shred them for disobeying his order to stay away." A brush of ice slithered across my nape. He would be that brutal? Lucian studied the wine in his goblet. "You don't hold on to power by being everyone's friend, and among the fairies, lesser and high fae alike, a firm hand is needed. We're too powerful and too bored with immortality to be checked by anything else." It seemed like a cold, lonely position to have, especially when you didn't particularly want it. I wasn't sure why it bothered me so much. So, there's a new section here, and it's all in italics. I don't know why yet. So if I realize partway, we'll find out. The snow was falling, thick and merciless, already up to my knees as I pulled the bowstring back, farther and farther until my arm trembled. Beside me a shadow lurked. No, watched. I didn't dare turn to look at it, to see who might be within that shadow, observing, not as the wolf stared at me across the clearing. Just staring, as if waiting, as if daring me to fire the ash arrow. No, I didn't want to do it, not this time, not again, not... But I had no control over my fingers, absolutely none, and he was still staring as I fired. One shot straight through that golden eye. A plume of blood splattering the snow, a thud of a heavy body, a sigh of wind. No! It wasn't a wolf that hit the snow. No, it was a man, tall and well-formed. No, not a man, a high fae with those pointed ears. I blinked, and then my hands were warm and sticky with blood. Then his body was red and skinless, steaming in the cold, and it was his skin, that I held in my hands. And I threw myself awake. She was dreaming. I threw myself awake, sweat slipping down my back, and forced myself to breathe, to open my eyes and note each detail of the night-dark bedroom. Real. This was real. But I could still see the high fae male face down in the snow, my arrow through his eye, red and bloody all over from where I'd cut and peeled off his skin. Bile stung my throat. Not real, just a dream. Even if what I'd done to Andres, even as a wolf, was, I scrubbed at my face. Perhaps it was the quiet, the hollowness of the past few days. Perhaps it was only that I no longer had to think hour to hour about how to keep my family alive. But it was regret, and maybe shame, that coated my tongue, my bones. I shuddered as if I could fling it off, and kicked back the sheets to rise from the bed. And that's chapter 11. Oh, there was chat going on in the Discord. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, let me see here. Oh, hi. Slick Pebble 86. Who's Slick Pebble? I don't know you. I love the name though. Beautiful. Fantastic. Oh, it's so changing your name again on me. Damn it, I know you. Okay. I also had wanted to say, oh, yay, thank you, Ryan Osmosis for the follow. Thank you. I wanted to mention that, like, I had looked up chapter summaries so that I could kind of, like, remind myself what was going on, and obviously did not have time to read them before tonight, so what was the use of that? But when I was Googling, all of the autofill results were amazing. It was just, like, in poorly written, like, bad grammar, like, when do Feyre and Tamlin do it? When Feyre and Tamlin have sex? It was just, like, so bad. I was like, yeah, this is Google. This is accurate for Google. Oh, thank you so for the follow. Yes, yeah. Non-lube condoms are super hard to get. We get them sometimes for the Rocky Horror Shadowcast that I do here in Toronto, and like to both use as props and then also to, like, hand out. And yeah, so they fucking. But yeah, sometimes we're trying to look for the non-lubed ones for various things, and they're just, like, so difficult to find. I can't remember who it was. But I do have this memory, and it would have been, like, years ago, because I honestly haven't even been to the Rocky Horror thing in, God, like, pre-pandemic. I think it was a year pre-pandemic was the last time I'd had time to do it. But somebody in our Shadowcast had, like, bought the ones that had, like tingling sensation or something, like, on it. And they tried to blow them up like balloons, and I seem to remember that being very not pleasant for both them and, like, anybody who came into contact with it. People are fucking... yeah. So yeah, so I guess we're on to chapter 12 now. Oh yeah, no, to protect the body mic packs, yes. From Sweaty Dude? Oh no. Has anybody had a conversation on set about Sweaty Dude? Or is this just gonna be like you discreetly pass Sweaty Dude some non-lube condoms and just be like, these are just for you. Don't worry. Just stay safe. Like you're his mom. Just keep them in your wallet. Cover your body mic pack. You'll be good. It's okay. Don't have to talk about it. Check the expiry date. But I don't really play video games. I don't know if this is, like, a thing. Oh, you're working with NFL stuff, and they're going to be running around. Okay, makes sense. So all sweaty dudes. Hey, you know what? I am in a long-term relationship with a sweaty dude, so it's fine. He's a sweaty, hairy dude all the time. He is very much my, like, wolfy teddy boy. So I forgive anybody who is, like, sweaty, who sheds, all of this is normal to me. Oh, but he did recently start, he's usually a shower guy, but he recently decided that baths were what he likes. I hope I'm not like revealing too much, just because like he started going to the gym again since they just reopened here in the city. And he likes to use like Epsom salts and bath bombs and stuff, and I have a bunch in the cupboard that I haven't used yet, and he accidentally used one of mine that was like super glittery, and he's got, like I said, he's very hairy, but he's also got a lot of beard. That was the sparkliest, goldest sparkly beard I think I've seen in a while. It was great. It's still all over the bathroom. Oh, and like I'm legit sweaty too, by the way. Like not all over my body, it's just my pits. It's happening right now because I've got a space heater right behind me. If I didn't have it, I'd be freezing, but I do require it. And it's only been a thing that's been a problem in my mid to late 20s. It's new for me. So that's fun. Our body's great. Don't we love that? Okay, so yeah, so we are going to move on to chapter 12. I really wish I either had an easier way to do this or I had somebody helping me who could do this for me. But this is what this is. It's like the least important, and I still insist on doing it. Oh, and then just like a quick reminder for everybody in chat that there is a donate link. You can fill up my little champagne glass that's down there in the corner. It's not required. It's just something that I appreciate. Also, make sure if you're not already following, give me a little bit of a follow. And I'm not sure if subbing is a thing that can happen on my channel yet, since I almost never do anything on here. But if you want to, I'd appreciate it. Once again, not required. Just makes my heart happy. Great. So let's move on to chapter 12. I couldn't entirely shake the horror, the gore of my dream as I walked down the dark halls of the manor, the servants and Lucian long since asleep. But I had to do something, anything, after that nightmare, if only to avoid sleeping. A bit of paper in one hand and a pen gripped in the other, I carefully traced my steps, noting the windows and doors and exits, occasionally jotting down vague sketches and X's on the parchment. It was the best I could do. And to any literate human, my markings would have made no sense. But I couldn't write or read more than my basic letters, and my makeshift map was better than nothing. Oh, so we're learning right now that Feyre is functionally illiterate. Which I suppose isn't surprising, since she was quite young when her mom died and they became poor, so I guess that makes sense. But yeah, maybe that's something she can learn. Like, she loves to paint, and that's awesome. Maybe she'll get to learn how to read, and then she can love books. And then it'll be a real Beauty and the Beast story. She's like Belle, but with paint. Is that true? I don't know. If I were to remain here, it was essential to know the best hiding places, the easiest way out, should things ever go badly for me. I couldn't entirely let go of the instinct. Girl, wait, so you're just walking around, just like making big old marks on the wall and like put them up, and you're just like, nobody'll know what this means, so it's fine. Like, you can't just write on the wall and expect it to be like, okay. Like, it's a very nice, fancy house. I'm sure someone's gonna notice and be like, who the fuck? When did we get a toddler? Like, girl, don't draw on the walls. I have to goog on that shit. Don't do it. It was too dim to admire any of the paintings lining the walls, and I didn't dare risk a candle. These past 3 days, there had been servants in the halls when I'd worked up the nerve to look at the art, and the part of me that spoke with Nesta's voice had laughed at the idea of an ignorant human trying to admire fairy art. Some other time, then, I told myself. I would find another day, a quiet hour when no one was around to look at them. I had plenty of hours now, a whole lifetime in front of me. Perhaps I'd figure out what I wish to do with it. I crept down the main staircase, moonlight flooding the black and white tiles of the entrance hall. I reached the bottom, my bare feet silent on the cold tiles, and listened. Nothing. No one. I set my little map on the foyer table and drew a few X's and circles to signify the doors, the windows. Oh, wait, so she's writing on a map. I'm dumb. I thought she was like literally. I thought she was marking up the building to be like, this is a good escape route. I used to be so good at reading comprehension. Like, in high school, it was like literally on like papers and stuff, being like, she's really good at reading in English. Like, that's her best subject. That and drama. Fuck. Okay, so she drew a few X's on her map and a few X's and circles to signify the doors, the windows, the marble stairs of the front hall. I would become so familiar with the house that I could navigate it even if someone blinded me. A breeze announced his arrival, and I turned from the table toward the long hall to the open glass doors, to the garden. And I turned from the table toward the long hall, to the open glass doors to the garden. I'd forgotten how huge he was in this form, forgotten the curled horns and lupine face, the bear-like body that moved with a feline fluidity. His green eyes glowed in the darkness, fixing on me, and as the doors snicked shut behind him, the clicking of claws on marble filled the hall. I stood still, not daring to flinch, to move a muscle. He limped slightly, and in the moonlight, dark, shining stains were left in his wake. He continued toward me, stealing the air from the entrance hall. He was so big that the space felt cramped, like a cage. The scrape of claw, a huff of uneven breathing, the dripping of blood. Between one step and the next, he changed forms, and I squeezed my eyes shut at the blinding flash. When at last my eyes adjusted to the returning darkness, he was standing in front of me. Standing, but not quite there. No sign of the baldric or his knives. His clothes were in shreds. Long, vicious slashes that made me wonder how he wasn't gutted and dead. But the muscled skin peering out beneath his shirt was smooth, unharmed. "Did you kill the bog?" My voice was hardly more than a whisper. "Yes." A dull, empty answer, as if he couldn't be bothered to remember to be pleasant, as if they were at the very, very bottom of a long list of priorities. Right? Like, body sounds good. But I do wonder why he transforms, why his clothes come with him, and why they would be shredded, but he was not. Could he not perhaps be nude? Would this not perhaps be better? I don't know. Just notes. "You're hurt," I said even more quietly. Indeed, his hand was covered in blood, even more splattering on the floor beneath him. He looked at it blankly, as if it took some monumental effort to remember that he even had a hand, and that it was injured. What effort of will and strength had it taken to kill the bog, to face that wretched menace? How deep had he had to dig inside himself, to whatever immortal power and animal lived there, to kill it? He glanced down at the map on the table, and his voice was void of anything, any emotion, any anger, or amusement, as he said, "What is that?" I snatched up the map. I thought I should learn my surroundings. Drip, drip, drip. I opened my mouth to point out his hand again, but, guys, this dog is licking the desk. There's nothing there. There's no reason to do this. You're being so silly and annoying. She's also very sweaty, by the way. For all the sweaty people, this is a sweaty dog. I know people say dogs don't sweat. This dog sweats. Yes. I opened my mouth to point out his hand again, but he said, "You can't write, can you?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. Ignorant, insignificant human. No wonder you became so adept at other things. I suppose he was so far gone to thinking about his encounter with the bog that he hadn't realized the compliment he'd given me. If it was a compliment. Another splatter of blood on the marble. Where can I clean up your hand? He lifted his head to look at me again, still and silent and weary. Then he said, "There's a small infirmary." I wanted to tell myself that it was probably the most useful thing I'd learned all night, but as I followed him there, avoiding the blood he trailed, I thought of what Lucian had told me about his isolation, that burden. Thought of what Tamlin had mentioned about how these estates should not have been his, and felt sorry for him. The infirmary was well stocked, but was more of a supply closet than a work table. More of a supply closet with a work table than an actual place to host sick fairies. I suppose that was all they needed when they could heal themselves with their immortal powers. But this wound, wasn't healing. Tamlin slumped against the edge of the table, gripping his injured hand at the wrist as he watched me sort through the supplies in the cabinets and drawers. When I'd gathered what I needed, I tried not to balk the thought of touching him. But I didn't let myself give in to my dread as I took his hand, the heat of his skin like an inferno against my cool fingers. I cleaned off his bloody, dirty hand, bracing for the first flash of those claws. But his claws remained retracted, and he kept silent as I bound and wrapped his hand. Surprisingly enough, there were no more than a few vicious cuts, none of them requiring stitching. I secured the bandage in place and stepped away, bringing the bowl of bloody water to the deep sink in the back of the room. His eyes were a brand upon me as I finished cleaning, and the room became too small, too hot. He killed the bog and walked away relatively unscathed. If Tamlin was that powerful, then the High Lords of Prithian must be near gods. Every mortal instinct in my body bleated in panic at the thought. I was almost at the open door, stifling the urge to bolt back to my room, when he said, "You can't write, yet you learn to hunt, to survive. How?" I paused with my foot on the threshold. That's what happens when you're responsible for the lives of others than your own, isn't it? You do what you have to do. He was still sitting on the table, still straddling that inner line between the here and now and wherever he'd had to go in his mind to endure the fight with the bog. I met his feral and glowing stare. "You aren't what I'd expected for a human," he said. I didn't reply, and he didn't say goodbye as I walked out. So there's your little Beauty and the Beast moment, like after he saves her from the wolves and she has to clean him up. So they did that here too. Yes, we did that here too. For those of you that missed that, this is Mimosa. And even though I have been saying that she's been being naughty, I still love her very much. She's my baby. It's Duchess Mimosa de Champagne. She's very fancy. The next morning, as I made my way down the grand staircase, I tried not to think too much about the clean-washed marble tiles on the floor below. No sign of the blood Tamlin had lost. I tried not to think too much at all about our encounter, actually. When I found the front hall empty, I almost smiled, felt a ripple in that hollow emptiness that had been hounding me. Perhaps now, perhaps in this moment of quiet, I could at last look through the art on the walls, take time to observe it. Go. You're licking yourself and biting at your butt too much. Go. She's allergies. She bites her butt a lot. It's gross. Okay. Perhaps now, perhaps in this moment of quiet, I could at last look through the art on the walls, take time to observe it, learn it, admire it. Heart racing at the thought, I was about to head toward a hall I had noted was nearly covered in painting after painting, when low male voices floated out from the dining room. I paused. The voices were tense enough that I made my steps silent as I slid into the shadows behind the open door. A cowardly, wretched thing to do. But what they were saying had me shoving aside my guilt. Okay, which one is this? There we go. I just want to know what you think you're doing. It was Lucian, that familiar lazy viciousness coating each word. What are you doing? Tamlin snapped. Through the space between the hinge and the door, I could glimpse the two of them standing almost face to face. On Tamlin's non-bandaged hand, his claws shone in the morning light. Me? Lucian put a hand on his chest. By the cauldron, Tam, there isn't much time, and you're just sulking and glowering. You're not even trying to fake it anymore. My brows rose. Tamlin turned away but whirled back a moment later. His teeth bared. It was a mistake from the start. I can't stomach it, not after what my father did to their kind, to their lands. I won't follow in his footsteps, won't be that sort of person. So back off! Don't want to be like Daddy, I know. I get that. I fight being like my daddy every day. Back off? Back off, will you seal our fates and ruin everything? I stayed with you out of hope, not to watch you stumble. For someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. The bog was in our lands. The bog, Tamlin. The barriers between courts have vanished, and even our woods are teeming with filth like the puka. Are you just going to start living out there, slaughtering every bit of vermin that slinks in? Watch your mouth, Tamlin said. Lucian stepped toward him, exposing his teeth as well. A pulsing kind of air hit me in the stomach, and a metallic stench filled my nose. But I couldn't see any magic, only feel it. I couldn't tell if that made it worse. Don't push me, Lucian. Tamlin's tone became dangerously quiet, and the hair on the back of my neck stood as he emitted a growl that was pure animal. You think I don't know what's happening on my own lands? What I've got to lose? What's lost already? The blight. Perhaps it was contained, but it seemed it was still wreaking havoc, still a threat, and perhaps one that truly didn't want me knowing about it, either from lack of trust or because I was no one and nothing to them. I leaned forward, but as I did, my fingers slipped and softly thudded against the door. A human might not have heard, but both high fae whirled. My heart stumbled. I stepped toward the threshold, clearing my throat as I came up with a dozen excuses to shield myself. I looked at Lucian and forced myself to smile. His eyes widened, and I had to wonder if it was because of that smile, or because I looked truly guilty. Are you going out for a ride? I said, feeling a bit sick as I gestured behind me with a thumb. I hadn't planned on riding with him today, but it sounded like a decent excuse. Lucian's russet eye was bright, though the smile he gave me didn't meet it. The face of Tamlin's emissary, more court-trained and calculating than I'd seen him yet. I'm unavailable today, he said. He jerked his chin to Tamlin. He'll go with you, though. Tamlin shot his friend a look of disdain that he took few pains to hide. His usual baldric was armed with more knives than I'd seen before, and their ornate metal handles glinted as he turned to me, his shoulders tight. I know, I can't hear the word russet without thinking of Jackie reading Twilight either. Every time I hear russet. But I also think of potatoes, because I'm a potato person. Love a potato. It's the white person in me. I just love a potato. Okay. Whenever you want to go, just say so. The claws of his free hand slipped back under his skin. No. I almost said it aloud as I turned pleading eyes to Lucian. Lucian merely patted my shoulder as he passed by. Perhaps tomorrow, human. Alone with Tamlin, I swallowed hard. He stood there, waiting. I don't want to go for a hunt, I finally said quietly. True, I hate hunting. He cocked his head. Then what do you want to do? You! She wants to do you! Clearly not yet. I think she's actually scared of him. But, yeah. Tamlin led me down the halls. A soft breeze, laced with the scent of roses, slipped in through the open windows to caress my face. You've been going for hunts, Tamlin said at last. But you really don't have any interest in hunting. He cast me a sidelong glance. No wonder you two never catch anything. No trace of the hollow, cold warrior of the night before, or of the angry Fey noble of minutes before. Just Tamlin right now, it seemed. I'd be a fool to let my guard down around Tamlin, to think that his acting naturally meant anything, especially when something was so clearly amiss at his estate. He'd taken down the bog, but that made him the most dangerous creature I'd ever encountered. I didn't quite know what to make of him, and said somewhat stiltedly, "How's your hand?" Oh, can you guys hear the truck behind me? That's always fun when that happens. I do live across the street from a construction site, and I do live on a very low floor in this building. It's awesome. The construction men can see me at all times. And none of them are hot so far, so not worth it. He flexed his bandaged hand, studying the white bindings, stark and clean against his sun-kissed skin. I didn't thank you. You don't need to. But he shook his head, and his golden hair caught and held the morning light as if it were spun from the sun itself. Ooh, she decided she likes him. The bog's bite was crafted to slow the healing of High Fae long enough to kill us. You have my gratitude. When I shrugged it off, he added, How did you learn to bind wounds like this? I can still use a hand, even with the wrappings. Trial and error. I had to be able to pull a bowstring the next day. He was quiet as we turned down another sun-drenched marble hallway, and I dared to look at him. I found him carefully studying me, his lips in a thin line. Has anyone ever taken care of you? He asked quietly. He wants to take care of her. Which is such a common theme, especially in romance novels. It's just like, oh, you know, the girl who's always taking care of everybody else. And then this, like, handsome man comes and he'll be her daddy. It will be fine. Not like that's a theme in my life. No, I'd long since stopped feeling sorry for myself about it. Did you learn to hunt in a similar manner? Trial and error. Which also, by the way, I would love to learn how to cover up my cuts and bruises in a way where I could still move, because, like, I'm fucking hurting myself all the time, guys. Like, constantly. Just, like, if I don't have some sort of active injury, am I even alive? But that usually means I'm at least immobile in some part of my body. So. I spied on hunters when I could get away with it, and then practiced until I hit something. When I missed, we didn't eat, so learning how to aim was the first thing I figured out. I'm curious, he said casually. The amber in his green eyes was glowing. Perhaps not all traces of that beast warrior were gone. Beast warrior? Shit. Sorry. Beast warriors, or am I thinking of Beast Master? I don't know. There's definitely a show or something out there called Beast Warrior. For sure there is. No way there's not. Okay. Are you ever going to use that knife you stole from my table? Shit. I stiffened. How did you know? Beneath the mask, I could have sworn his brows were raised. I was trained to notice those things, but I could smell the fear on you more than anything. I grumbled. I thought no one noticed. He gave me a crooked smile, more genuine than all the faded smiles and flattery he'd given me before. Regardless of the treaty, if you want to stand a chance at escaping my kind, you'll need to think more creatively than stealing dinner knives. But with your affinity for eavesdropping, maybe you'll someday learn something valuable. My ears flared with heat. I wasn't... Sorry, I mumbled. But I ran through what I'd overheard. There was no point in pretending I hadn't eavesdropped. Lucian said you didn't have much time. What did he mean? Are more creatures like the bug going to come here thanks to the blight? Tamlin went rigid, scanning the hall around us, taking in every sight and sound and scent. Then he shrugged, too stiff to be genuine. I'm an immortal. I have nothing but time, Feyre. Nothing but time. You'd kill for nothing but time. He said my name with such intimacy, as if he weren't a creature capable of killing monsters made from nightmares. I opened my mouth to demand more of an answer, but he cut me off. The force plaguing our lands and powers, that, too, will pass someday, if we're cauldron blessed. I can't, guys, this cauldron thing. I gotta wrap my head around it. It just feels very, it's one of those things that just always feels clunky to me. Very forced, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. But yes, now that the bog entered these lands, I'd say it's fair to assume others might follow it, especially if the puka was already so bold. If the borders between the courts were gone, though, as I'd heard Lucian say, if everything in Prythian was different, as Tamlin had claimed, thanks to this blight, well, I didn't want to be caught up in some brutal war or revolution. I doubted I'd survive very long. Tamlin strode ahead and opened a set of double doors at the end of the hall. The powerful muscles of his back shifted beneath his clothes. I'd never forget what he was capable of. But what he'd been trained to do, apparently. As requested, he said. The study. I saw what lay beyond him, and my stomach twisted. Ooh, what could be in there? That's the end of the chapter. Is it a sexy study? Is it a sexy room? Probably not. Although we are starting to get slightly more flirty, and that is promising. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I was napping for most of the day. Was I napping while I was supposed to be working? No. No. But it does mean that I'm still feeling slightly nappish. I napped and then I caught up on talking sex. So, and I have been having vivid ass dreams. I'll tell you what. I won't be that person who's like, I gotta tell you about my dreams. But they've been fucking wild, man. I was best friends with Batman. It's fucking weird. Okay, so we're moving on to chapter 13. It's not too long, but it's not like one that I would consider super short, so it may be the last one. But we will see what time we're at when it's done. Tamlin waved his hand, and 100 candles sprang to life. Whatever Lucian had said about magic being drained and off-kilter thanks to the blight clearly hadn't affected Tamlin as dramatically. Or perhaps he'd been far more powerful to start with. If he could transform his sentries into wolves whenever he pleased. I just completely misread that. Sorry, guys. Okay. Whatever Lucian had said about magic being drained and off-kilter thanks to the blight clearly hadn't affected Tamlin as dramatically. Or perhaps he'd been far more powerful to start with. If he could transform his sentries into wolves whenever he pleased. The tang of magic stung my senses, but I kept my chin high. That is, until I peered inside. My palms began sweating as I took in the enormous, opulent study. Tomes lined each wall like the soldiers of a silent army, and couches, desks, and couches, desks, and rich rugs were scattered throughout the room. But it had been over a week since I left my family. Though my father had said never to return, though my vow to my mother was fulfilled, I could at least let them know I was safe, relatively safe, and warn them about the sickness sweeping across Prithian that might someday soon cross the wall. There was only one method to convey it. "Do you need anything else?" Tamlin asked, and I jerked. He still stood behind me. "No," I said, striding into the study. I couldn't think about the casual power he'd just shown, the graceful carelessness with which he'd brought so many flames to life. Dog again. Stop it. I had to focus on the task at hand. It wasn't entirely my fault that I was scarcely able to read, but our downfall, my mother had sorely neglected. Before our downfall, my mother had sorely neglected our education, not bothering to hire a governess. And after poverty struck and my elder sisters, who could read and write, deemed a village school beneath us, they didn't bother to teach me. I could read enough to function, enough to form my letters, but so poorly that even signing my name was mortifying. It was bad enough that Tamlin knew. I would think about how to get the letter to them once it was finished. Perhaps I could beg a favor of him, or Lucian. Asking them to write it would be too humiliating. I could hear their words. Typical ignorant human. And since Lucian seemed convinced that I would turn spy the moment I could, he would no doubt burn the letter. And any I tried to write after. So I'd have to learn myself. "I'll leave you to it then," Tamlin said, as our silence became too prolonged, too tense. I didn't move until he'd closed the doors, shutting me inside. My heartbeat pulsed through my body as I approached a shelf. I had to take a break for dinner and to sleep, but I was back to the study before the dawn had fully risen. I found a small writing desk in a corner and gathered papers and ink. My finger traced a line of text, and I whispered the words. She grabbed her shoe, standing from her pole. I sat back in my chair and pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes. When I felt less near to ripping out my hair, I took the quill and underlined the word position. With a shaking hand, I did my best to copy letter after letter onto the ever-growing list I kept beside the book. There were at least 40 words on it, their letters malformed and barely legible. I would look up their pronunciations later. I rose from the chair, needing to stretch my legs, my spine, or just to get away from that lengthy list of words I didn't know. How to pronounce, and the permanent heat that now warmed my face and neck. I suppose the study was more of a library, as I couldn't see any of the walls thanks to the small labyrinths of stacks flanking the main area, and a mezzanine dangling above, covered wall to wall in books. But study sounded less intimidating. I meandered through some of the stacks, following a trickle of sunlight to a bank of windows on the far side. I found myself overlooking a rose garden, filled with dozens of hues of crimson and pink and white and yellow. I might have allowed myself a moment to take in the colors, gleaming with dew under the morning sun, had I not glimpsed the painting that stretched along the wall beside the windows. Not a painting, I thought, blinking as I stepped back to view its massive expanse. No, it was... I searched for the word in that half-forgotten part of my mind. Mural. That's what it was. At first I could do nothing but stare at its size, and the ambition of it, at the fact that this masterpiece was tucked back here for no one to ever see, as if it was nothing, absolutely nothing, to create something like this. It told a story with the way colors and shapes and light flowed, the way the tone shifted across the mural, the story of Prithian. It began with a cauldron, a mighty black cauldron held by glowing, slender female hands in a starry, endless night. Those hands tipped it over, golden, sparkling liquid pouring out over the lip. No, not sparkling, but effervescent with small symbols, perhaps of some ancient fairy language. Whatever was written there, whatever it was, the contents of the cauldron were dumped into the void below, pooling on the earth to form our world. The map spanned the entirety of our world, not just the land on which we stood, but also the seas and the larger continents beyond. Each territory was marked and colored, some with intricate, ornate depictions of the beings who had once ruled over lands that now belonged to humans. All of it, I remembered with a shudder. All of the world had once been theirs, at least as far as they believed, crafted for them by the bearer of the cauldron. There was no mention of humans, no sign of us here. I suppose we'd been as low as pigs to them. It was hard to look at the next panel. It was so simple, yet so detailed that for a moment I stood there on that battlefield, feeling the texture of the bloody mud beneath me, shoulder to shoulder with the thousands of other human soldiers lined up, facing the fairy hordes who charged at us. A moment of pause before the slaughter. The humans' arrows and swords seemed so pointless against the high fae in their glimmering armor, or the fairies bristling with claws and fangs. I knew without another panel to explicitly show me, the humans hadn't survived that particular battle. The smear of black on the panel beside it, tinged with glimmers of red, said enough. Then another map of a much reduced fairy realm. Northern territories had been cut up and divided to make room for the High Fae, who had lost their lands to the south of the wall. Everything north of the wall went to them. Everything south was left as a blur of nothing. A decimated, forgotten world, as if the painter couldn't be bothered to render it. I scanned the various lands and territories now given to the High Fae. Still so much territory, such monstrous power spread across the entire northern part of our world. I knew they were ruled by kings or queens or councils or empresses, but I'd never seen a representation of it, of how much they'd been forced to concede to the south, and how crammed their lands now were in comparison. Our massive island had fared well for Prithian by comparison, with only the bottom tip given over to us miserable humans. The bulk of the sacrifice was borne by the southernmost of the 7 territories, a territory painted with crocuses and lambs and roses. Spring lands. I took a step closer until I could see the dark, ugly smear that acted as the wall. Another spiteful touch by the painter. No markers in the human realm, nothing to indicate any of the larger towns or centers, but I found the rough area where our village was, and the woods that separated it from the wall. Those 2 days' journeys seemed so small, too small, compared to the power lurking above us. I traced a line, my finger hovering over the paint, up over the wall, into these lands, the lands of the spring court. Again, no markers, but it was filled with touches of spring, trees in bloom, fickle storms, young animals. At least I was to live out my days in one of the more moderate courts, weather-wise. A small consolation. Oh, you got the Wordle in too. Good job. I don't really play video games. Good job. I have not dived into the Wordle yet. I do not do the Wordle. My boyfriend does the Wordle, and I helped him do it once, and we got it by the end. So I was proud, but I have not bothered trying yet. I tend to do that. It takes me extra long to get on with trends, but then I do eventually do it. Usually, right about the time that it dies. I thought people started doing the Wordle like forever ago, like weeks ago, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it's all just time means nothing. Time means nothing. Where am I? I don't know. I looked northward and stepped back again. The 6 other courts of Prithian occupied a patchwork of territories. Autumn, summer, and winter were easy enough to pick out. Then above them, 2 glowing courts. The southernmost one a softer, redder palette, the Dawn Court. Above, in bright gold and yellow and blue, the Day Court. And above that, perched in a frozen, mountainous spread of darkness and stars, the sprawling, massive territory of the Night Court. Night Court! Oh, I hope the Night Court is fun. I hope it's all funny people. I hope it's a comedy. I forget all the characters' names now. I did not watch a lot of Night Court, but I did watch some. There's a joke somewhere somebody could make that's smarter than me. Thank you. Yes, Moose is a character. Moose is someone who is on Night Court. And I think that there has to be some sort of court that happens at nighttime. Something. Clearly there's one in this world. It's court used differently, but it's still a night court. They have it. There were things in the shadows between those mountains. Little eyes, gleaming teeth. A land of lethal beauty. The hair on my arms rose. Little eyes, little eyes. I might have examined the other kingdoms across the seas that flanked our land, like the isolated fairy kingdom to the west that seemed to have gotten away with no territory loss and was still law unto itself. Had I not looked to the heart of that beautiful living map? In the center of the land, as if it were the core around which everything else had spread, or perhaps the place where the cauldron's liquid had first touched, was a small, snowy mountain range. From it arose a mammoth, solitary peak, bald of snow, bald of life, as if the elements refused to touch it. There were no more clues about what it might be, nothing to indicate its importance, and I supposed the viewers were already supposed to know. This was not a mural for human eyes. With that thought, I went back to my little table. At least I'd learned the layout of their lands, and I knew to never, ever go north. Never go north, guys. No, I don't like winter. I don't like cold. Outside here in Toronto, it's awful. I don't leave my apartment. I don't. Like, I don't even walk the dog. My partner walks the dog. He does it. I'm lucky I have someone who's willing to do it because I don't leave. Even the concierge in our building last night, I went to go pick up a package because they had it. And she was like, I don't see you. You used to come down and sit by the door before you leave for work. And I was like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. You won't see me. I eased into my seat and found my place in the book, my face warming as I glanced at the illustrations scattered throughout. A children's book, and yet I could scarcely make it through its 20 or so pages. Why did Tamlin have children's books in his library? Were they from his own childhood, or in anticipation of children to come? It didn't matter. I'm sorry, it is a huge mansion, it is a big court. You have to, or like it used to be, you have to imagine at some point there will be children. It's also a huge library. Definitely there's going to be some children's books there. Like, come on. Nah, this whole big-ass library, only adult books. Adult books would be more fun. I don't mean to put my pinky up when I drink, by the way. I just do that because I have weird hands. It's not me trying to be fancy. I'm just weird. It didn't matter. I couldn't even read them. I hated the smell of these books, the decaying rot of the pages, the mocking whisper of the paper, the rough skin of the binding. I looked at the piece of paper, at all the words I didn't know. That smell is visceral, though. Like, I like old book smell. I do, but I also like the way, like, antique shops smell. And I did once tell, I believe it was my grandmother who I told it to, I actually don't mind the way pet stores smell, but it's not because of the animal shit, because most pet stores don't even have animals. It's because of the feed. I like the way grain and wood chips and that kind of thing smells. Maybe it's because I grew up in the country. But I said that to her, and she was like, "Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? You like the way hamster shit smells?" And I was like, "No." Yeah, that wood chip smell, though. She doesn't like books. She is not like the other Bellas. Good job, Katricia. I like that. She's not like the other girls. I bunched my list in my hand, crumpling the paper into a ball, and chucked it into the rubbish bin. I could help you write to them if that's why you're in here. I jerked back in my seat, almost knocking over the chair, and whirled to find Tamlin behind me, a stack of books in his arms. Oh, but he likes to read. I pushed back against the heat rising in my cheeks and ears, panic at the information he might be guessing I'd been trying to send. Help? You mean a fairy is passing up the opportunity to mock an ignorant mortal? He set the books down on the table, his jaw tight. I couldn't read the titles glinting on the leather spines. Why should I mock you for a shortcoming that isn't your fault? Fair. Let me help you. I owe you for the hand. Shortcoming. It was a shortcoming. Yet it was one thing to bandage his hand, to talk to him as if he wasn't a predator built to kill and destroy. But to reveal how little I truly knew, to let him see that part of me that was still a child, unfinished and raw. His face was unreadable. Though there had been no pity in his voice, I straightened. I'm fine. This is like when people try to teach me math. I'm like really bad at math, like just completely glaze over if you try to have me do anything more than like 2 + 2. Like literally, I just don't even try anymore. I can't be bothered. And sometimes we watch, what's that show called again? It's one of those British panel shows. It's 9 out of 10 cats, but they do Countdown, which is a word and a math game. And I'm very good at the word games. Yes, thank you, Pepino. Yes, Countdown, but it's specifically the 9 out of 10 cats does Countdown, still comedians, because I wouldn't watch regular Countdown. Because it's already fairly dry. I don't think I would. But I'm very good at the word ones. I tend to at least get like a decent score when we play it like as a couple along with the show. But the math ones, I don't even try anymore. I think I've gotten it like one time when it was extra easy. And I don't even try. I just can't. And he'll sometimes stop and he'll be like, watch how they do the math. Try to learn the math. And I'm like, I'm not here to learn math, dude. Like, just not score that part. I'm just not doing it. Like, just no. Not interested. No, thank you. Won't even pretend that I could get it. No way. It's why I'm not good at my taxes. It's why I definitely owe money to the government that I don't know about. Yeah, just bad at it. Kate Trisha, you work on an engineering team and you hate math. Oh my god. But you are the only one that can spell, and that is very useful. See, like, I also come, like, my mom is a banker. She is fairly high level in one of the Canadian banks. And my Nana, her mom, worked for the CRA, which is, like, the Canadian IRS. And my uncle, her brother, is a banker. Like, that whole side of my family all does, like, bank shit. And like, I wouldn't say they're like good at math, but they're good enough at math that they can work in a bank. And like, I applied once and they were like, no. Like the guidance counselor at my high school, my mom made me take like the academic level math, because that's supposed to be like the one you have to take to get into a university versus a college, which didn't work out for me anyway, let's be real. And the guidance counselor made me go down to the lower level after a couple weeks because I was just so bad at it. Like, I didn't miss any classes. I was there. I missed classes. Let's be honest. There was a whole lot of shit wrapped up in why I missed a lot of school. We can get into that later if we want. But I missed a lot of school, and it was not because I was skipping, and it was not because I didn't want to be there. Missed a lot of school, and I was really bad at the math class, so that was one where it showed that I was not there, and the guidance counselor made me drop down to the lower level of math, and as soon as I got there, because it was like your basic math, and they actually taught us more stuff that's useful, like about like budgeting and stuff, not that I'm able to do it anyway, but it was easier, and I was like, oh, okay, I can make this work. I can handle this level of math class. It's like, I'm here with the challenged people, and that's okay. I do not mind. It's honestly where I belong. We're all challenged in our own way. You think I've got nothing better to do with my time than come up with elaborate ways to humiliate you? I thought of that smear of nothing that the painter had used to render the human lands, and didn't have an answer. At least not one that was polite. I'd given enough already to them. To him. Tamlin shook his head. So you'll let Lucian take you on hunts, and Lucian, I interrupted quietly, but not softly, doesn't pretend to be anything but what he is. What's that supposed to mean? He growled, but his claws stayed retracted, even as he clenched his hands into fists at his side. I was definitely walking a dangerous line, but I didn't care. Even if he'd offered me sanctuary, I didn't have to fall at his feet. It means, I said with that same cold quiet, that I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know who you are, or what you really are, or what you want. Wouldn't say it like that, but that's how I had to say it. I am mathematical challenge. Yes, I don't really play video games. The spelling mistake was not egregious, but it did highlight exactly how I feel in my soul about it. I am mathematically challenged. Cannot do. It means you don't trust me. How can I trust a fairy? Don't you delight in killing and tricking us? His snarl set the flames of the candles guttering. You weren't what I had in mind for a human, believe me. I could almost feel the wound deep in my chest as it ripped open, and all those awful silent words came pouring out. Illiterate, ignorant, unremarkable, proud, cold. All spoken from Nesta's mouth, all echoing in my head with her sneering voice. Ooh, that, oh, I feel that. Oh, that's like you've been bullied and like you've got a lot of trauma wrapped up in certain things, and it's all just like right there. And then it comes out and you're just like, oh, God, okay, I understand that for sure. All the time. I pinched my lips together. He winced and lifted a hand slightly, as if to reach for me. Feyre, he began, softly enough that I just shook my head and left the room. He didn't stop me. Oh, do we get like a lot of really good stuff about writing about trauma? Awesome. I'm sure I will not be able to resist trauma dumping on all of you. I hope you enjoy. It's gotten me in trouble before, and it will get me in trouble again. But that afternoon, when I went to retrieve my crumpled list from the wastebasket, it was gone, and my pile of books had been disturbed. The titles out of order. It had probably been a servant, I assured myself, calming the tightness in my chest. Just Alice, or some other bird-masked fairy cleaning up. I hadn't written anything incriminating. There was no way he knew I'd been trying to warn my family. I doubted he would punish me for it, but our conversation earlier had been bad enough. Still, my hands were unsteady as I took my seat at the little desk and found my place in the book I'd used that morning. I knew it was shameful to mark the books with ink, but if Tamlin could afford gold plates, he could replace a book or two. And I will say, some people are very sacred about books. I do not mind writing in books, but I learned that from an English teacher in high school, specifically because she suggested it for notating Brave New World, which I hated that book. There are many reasons why dystopian fiction is very difficult for me to enjoy, but that one in particular. And so I found my old copy, like the one that I notated in for school, not too long ago, when I was going through a box of old things from school. Those notes are bad and not worth rereading. But embarrassing, and in purple glitter gel pen. So, I was a teen. Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of people, Katricia, that was one of the few books from school that people actually liked. But that one, what is it? I can't even explain what it is about it that it just upset me so deeply, and I couldn't handle at that time being so deeply upset. And anytime a book has a particularly strong political message, here we go, here's some trauma. My father will give me his opinion on it, and it's usually not the right one. And especially then, I was very easily swayed by his opinions. Not into believing them, just into thinking I was dumb. And so there we have it. I may enjoy it more now. I definitely may enjoy it more now that my brain is bigger. And I'm a more independent woman. But yeah, at the time, very hard for me to digest. I think, I liked Shakespeare a lot then, and I like it less now. I think partially because I was always told as a theater kid that you have to love Shakespeare. You don't. The truth is you don't. You can like it, but you also don't have to love musical theater. You don't have to love great film in order to be a film person. Like, all of those things are just gatekeeping and they're bullshit. And please don't let anybody tell you that you have to. It's worth reading if you enjoy it, but don't feel like you have to like it. And that's all I'll say about that. My partner still holds Shakespeare in very high regard. He's also got movie posters up that are all like the greats. And he still holds those in high regard. We're both actor types. And I'm more and more getting away from that. He's obsessed with Charlie Chaplin. And I'm like, honey, you're not going to be a silent film actor. That's not a thing anymore. Maybe make a TikTok. Anyway. Where were we? Great. I stared at the book without seeing the jumble of letters. Maybe I was a fool for not accepting his help, for not swallowing my pride and having him write the letter in a few moments. Not even a letter of warning, but just to let them know I was safe. If he had better things to do with his time than come up with ways to embarrass me, then surely he had better things to do than help me write letters to my family. And yet he'd offered. A nearby clock chimed the hour. Shortcoming. Another one of my shortcomings. I rubbed my brows with my thumb and forefinger. I'd been equally foolish for feeling a shred of pity for him, but for the lone, brooding fairy, for someone I had stupidly thought would really care if he met someone who perhaps felt the same, perhaps understood, in my ignorant, insignificant human way, what it was like to bear the weight of caring for others. I should have let his hand bleed that night. Should have known better than to think that maybe there would be someone, human or fairy or whatever, who could understand what my life, what I had become these past few years. A minute passed, then another. Fairies might not be able to lie, but they could certainly withhold information. Tamlin, Lucian, and Alice had done their best not to answer my specific questions. Knowing more about the blight that threatened them, knowing anything about it, where it had come from, what else it could do, and especially what it could do to a human, was worth my time to learn. And if there was a chance that they might also possess some knowledge about a forgotten loophole of that damned treaty, if they knew some way to pay the debt I owed and return me to my family so I might warn them about the blight myself, I had to risk it. 20 minutes later, I had tracked down Lucian in his bedroom. Ooh. I'd marked on my little map where it was, in a separate wing on the second level, far from mine. And after searching in his usual haunts, it was the last place to look. I knocked on the white-painted double doors. Come in, human. He could probably detect me by my breathing patterns alone. Or maybe that eye of his could see through the door. I eased open the door. The room was similar to mine in shape, but was bedecked in hues of orange and red and gold, with faint traces of green and brown, like being in the autumn wood. Can I just say, Lucian is way more like my type, but also who I want to be. We want to fuck who we want to be, right? He's got the fox face. Foxes are like my favorite. I would have a really hard time. He's also kind of fancy and haughty and rude, and that it's very easy to get me with that, unfortunately. Like, I'd hate him, but I'd love him. I'd hate him, but I'd love him. I don't really play video games, love silent films, but record sounds for videos. Accurate. Oh no, I will definitely allow it. My auto mod took your comment and said like, oh, he a sassy bitch? That's misogyny. I don't know if that's misogyny. I can see why the word would necessarily be flagged, but he's a sassy bitch, and I like that. At the very least, I'd want to be his friend. Be like, yes, Foxy Man, be rude to me. Aha. Would I? I don't know. Okay, where is he? There we go. But while my room was all softness and grace, his was marked with ruggedness. In lieu of a pretty breakfast table by the window, a worn work table dominated the space, covered in various weapons. It was there he sat, wearing only a white shirt and trousers, his red hair unbound and gleaming like liquid fire. Tamlin's court-trained emissary, but a warrior in his own right, a warrior or a swordsmith. The boy crafts. I'm down. Okay. I got a craft table right over there. We can make whatever you want. I haven't seen you around. Oh, that wasn't him. I haven't seen you around, I said, shutting the door and leaning against it. I had to go sort out some hotheads on the northern border. Official emissary business, he said, setting down the hunting knife he'd been cleaning. A long, vicious blade. Cleaning table, come on. No. In my head, it is his weapon crafting table. That's what I've decided. I'm just saying it. I believe it. I got back in time to hear your little spat with Tam and decided I was safer up here. I'm glad to hear your human heart has warmed to me, though. At least I'm not on the top of your killing list. I gave him a long look. Well, he went on, shrugging. It seems that you managed to get under Tam's fur enough that he sought me out and nearly bit my head off. So I suppose I can thank you for ruining what should have been a peaceful lunch. Thankfully for me, there's been a disturbance out in the western forest, and my poor friend had to go deal with it in that only way he can. In that way only he can. I'm surprised you didn't run into him on the stairs. Thank the forgotten gods for some small mercies. What sort of disturbance? Lucian shrugged, but the movement was too tense to be careless. The usual sort. Unwanted, nasty creatures raising hell. Good. Good that Tanlin was away and wouldn't be here to catch me in what I planned to do. Another bit of luck. I'm impressed you answered me that much, I said as casually as I could, thinking through my words. But it's too bad you're not like Suriel, spouting any information I want if I'm clever enough to snare you. For a moment, he blinked at me. Then his mouth twisted to the side, and that metal eye whizzed and narrowed on me. I suppose you won't tell me what you want to know. You have your secrets, and I have mine, I said carefully. I couldn't tell whether he would try to convince me otherwise if I told him the truth. But if you were a Suriel, I added with deliberate slowness, in case he hadn't caught my meaning. How exactly would I trap you? What are we doing? What are we doing? Oh no. Oh, I'm taking this direction. It's definitely not going. Sorry, guys. Lucian set down the knife and picked at his nails. For a moment, I wondered if he would tell me anything at all. Wondered if he would go right to Tamlin and tattle. But then he said, I'd probably have a weakness for groves of young birch trees in the western woods, and freshly slaughtered chickens, and would probably be so greedy that I wouldn't notice the double-loop snare rigged around the grove to pin my legs in place. I didn't dare ask why he had decided to be accommodating. There was still a good chance he wouldn't mind seeing me dead, but I would risk it. I somehow prefer you as a high fae. He smirked, but the amusement was short-lived. If I were insane and stupid enough to go after a Suriel, I'd also take a bow and a quiver, and maybe a knife just like this one. He sheathed the knife he'd cleaned and set it down at the edge of the table, an offering. And I'd be prepared to run like hell when I freed it, to the nearest running water which they hate crossing. But you're not insane, so you'll be here, safe and sound? I'll be conveniently hunting on the grounds, and with my superior hearing, I might be feeling generous enough to listen if someone screams from the western woods. But it's a good thing I had no role in telling you to go out today, since Tam would eviscerate anyone who told you how to trap a Suriel, and it's a good thing I had planned to hunt anyway, because if anyone caught me helping you, there would be trouble of a whole other hell awaiting us. I hope your secrets are worth it. He said it with his usual grin, but there was an edge to it. A warning I didn't miss. Another riddle, and another bit of information. I said, it's a good thing that while you have superior hearing, I possess superior abilities to keep my mouth shut. He snorted as I took the knife from the table and turned to procure the bow from my room. I think I'm starting to like you, for a murdering human. And that's the end of chapter 13. So yeah, guys, because we're approaching 9 o'clock, I think it's probably a good time to sort of wrap things up. Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. Is she gonna catch this thing? Which, once again, it's a name I don't know if I'm saying right, but I'm gonna say Suriel. Cereal. Cereal. She's gonna go get some Cheerios. Nope, that's not at all a thing. Okay, thank you. I'm saying it right. Good. Oh my gosh. Okay, guys. So, yeah, I will see you all on Sunday. Just a reminder, we're doing that currently at 3 o'clock EST. Um, it's a new time. I did that mainly because I figured like some of the Sunday streams may start a little earlier. Meaning like Gloss and the new one that Jackie's doing with Lisa Rose, but I think they don't start until 8 EST, so maybe we can do later. I don't know. 3 is fine for me either way. I just want to make sure you guys aren't like all busy at 3. Because that's what really matters is the people who are here and who are following along, being able to catch it. So please, you know where the Discord is, you know where I am. Let me know if times are not working for people, or if times are perfect or whatever. You always know where I'm at. So yeah, I will see you all for more reading on Sunday, and I will see you, yeah, tomorrow night for Daddies, right? Over on Honest Jackie. We will be getting some daddies. We're gonna finish funding that damn dress. I'll tell you what, for sure. If I had money, I would have already done it. But I am, generally speaking, fairly broke. So these windows, just the big old windows, they don't pay for themselves. So yes, daddies, and then Gossip Girl. Oh my god, I almost forgot. Thank you, Cat's Getting Me. So excited that you were here. You weren't in chat, but you were here. So yeah, that's good to know who was here. Oh, you got your Valentine. Yay. I can't wait to get mine. I'm so excited. Although even though I didn't really give them much at all, I was just like basically, you know me, just do whatever. I don't know. I hate asking for compliments or whatever. But anyway, guys, yes, see you tomorrow for more fun. No, Kate Tricia, you'll miss both. Damn it. Yep, pre-game. It's gonna be good. I need to start drinking more. Anyway, night, y'all. Bye.